That night, Mother lifted her wine glass and laughed. "No wonder you're still single at 34. The whole table erupted in laughter. The man sitting beside me just brushed his knee against mine under the table. Beneath my collar lay the wedding ring I'd hidden for 3 years, and the plan to expose everything was ready down to the minute. 8 p.m. The timed press release would drop. 8:05 p.m. The charity fund's accounting documents would project onto the big screen. 8:07 p.m. The county police sirens would wail right outside the club gates. And me, I only needed to say one thing. "Everyone, meet my husband. My name is Natalie Pierce, and tonight I'm about to destroy the family that tried to erase me. The Harbor Oaks Country Club hasn't changed since I was dragged here in patent leather shoes at age 7. Same mahogany panels gleaming with a century of old money polish. Same portrait of Confederate generals watching over Charleston's elite as they slice through $40 steaks. The private dining room smells exactly as I remember bourbon, gardenias, and the particular brand of entitlement that comes with 10 generations of inherited wealth. Natalie, darling, you're slouching again." Mother Lydia Pierce to the society pages doesn't look at me as she adjusts the centerpiece of white orchids. Her fingers, adorned with the emerald ring that's been photographed in Town and Country 3 times, move with surgical precision. "And that dress? Did you buy it in Denver? It shows." I straighten my spine automatically. 34 years old and still responding to her commands like a trained seal. The dress is actually from a boutique in Cherry Creek that would make her weep with envy if she knew the price tag, but I'd chosen it specifically for its understated cut. Nothing that would upstage her champagne Chanel. "The prodigal daughter returns," my brother Sebastian announces, sweeping in with his trademark smirk. His Breitling catches the light new, probably celebrating another successful quarter at Blue Meridian Capital. He air kisses Mother, then turns to me. "Still analyzing risk for that. What was it, tech startup, North Star Analytics?" I keep my voice neutral. "We're actually consulting for several Fortune 500s now." "How modern." Mother's tone could freeze champagne. "Though I suppose someone has to do that sort of work." Speaking of work, the Pierce Promise Foundation just secured funding for 50 new scholarships. You'd know that if you came home more than twice a year. Father Graham shuffles in last, already on his second bourbon, judging by the slight flush across his cheeks. He pats my shoulder awkwardly, the same gesture he's been using since I was 12, and he didn't know what else to do with a daughter who wouldn't conform. "Good to see you, sweetheart." That's when Ethan walks in. I force myself not to react as my husband of 3 years enters wearing the carefully selected outfit we'd chosen, blazer but no tie, expensive but not ostentatious watch, shoes that suggested comfort over status. He looks like exactly what we need him to look like, nobody important. "Everyone, this is Ethan Ward," I say casually. "He's a colleague from Denver. He had business in Charleston, so I invited him to join us." Mother's eyes narrow, cataloging him in that way she has, calculating his net worth by the thread count of his shirt. "How thoughtful of you. Natalie, though you might have mentioned you were bringing a guest." "My apologies. Mrs. Pierce." Ethan's smile is perfectly calibrated, warm enough to seem genuine, distant enough to maintain his cover. "Natalie speaks so highly of these family dinners. I hope I'm not imposing." "Not at all." The lie slides through Mother's teeth like silk. She gestures to the chair beside mine, the one usually reserved for whatever eligible bachelor she's trying to force on me. "Please, sit. We were just discussing Natalie's independence." The word hangs in the air like a diagnosis. We take our seats at the table that could accommodate 12, but tonight holds only 5. The walls are lined with photographs from Pierce family events spanning decades, charity galas, yacht christenings, debutante balls. I appear in exactly none of the photos from the past 5 years. That was intentional Mother's way of punishing my defection to Denver. "The scholarship recipients this year are particularly impressive," Mother continues, launching into her practiced speech about the foundation. "Of course, managing such a large charitable operation requires constant oversight. Sebastian has been invaluable with the investment strategies. My brother preens. Just maximizing impact. Mother. The partnership with Blue Meridian ensures sustainable growth. Under the table. My phone vibrates. 7:45 p.m. 15 minutes until the first domino falls. Wine. Father offers, already reaching for the Chateau Margaux that costs more than most people's rent. Please. I accept the glass, feeling the weight of the wedding ring hidden beneath my collar on its chain. 3 years of marriage reduced to a secret worn against my skin like armor. Ethan's knee brushes mine 3 taps. Our signal. Everything is in place. Mother raises her glass, lipstick perfect despite the pre-dinner cocktails. To family, she says, looking directly at me, and to those who understand what that truly means. The others lift their glasses. I lift mine, knowing that in 12 minutes, her definition of family will shatter like the crystal she's holding. To family, I echo, and drink deep. 7:58 p.m. on my phone. 2 minutes. The past bleeds through in flashes as I watch Mother orchestrate the dinner conversation like a conductor with her invisible baton. I was 8 when she first told me I was difficult. I'd refused to wear the pink organza dress to the foundation's spring gala, wanting pants instead. She'd gripped my shoulders hard enough to leave marks and hissed, "Pierce women don't embarrass their families." That was the first time I learned that love in our house came with conditions. By 12, I'd memorized the script. Smile but not too wide. Speak but not too loud. Excel but not enough to overshadow Sebastian. Date the right boys from the right families, the Thorntons, the Ashfords, the Beauregards. When I brought home David Kim from calculus class, Mother had looked at him once and said, "How ethnic," before closing the door in his face. Remember when Natalie dated that Thornton boy? Mother says now, slicing into her salmon with surgical precision. Such a promising match. His family owns half of Kiowa Island. He also owned a cocaine habit, I say quietly. All the best families have their little scandals. Darling, it's how one manages them that matters. Sebastian laughs, like when Natalie thought she'd become a public defender. Remember that phase. Mother. Thankfully brief. Mother's smile could cut glass, though not as mortifying as when she dated that photographer. What was his name? The one with the motorcycle. Marcus. I remember Marcus. He'd seen me, really seen me, not just the Pierce name and bank account. Mother had him investigated, found a juvenile record for vandalism, and threatened to have him arrested for stalking if he didn't disappear. He left Charleston within a week. You always did have questionable taste, Mother continues. It's why I had to intervene so often. Left to your own devices, you'd have ended up married to some nobody from nowhere, living in some forgotten suburb, wasting the Pierce legacy on mediocrity. Ethan's hand finds mine under the table. Steady, warm, real. The breaking point came 6 years ago. I was 28, working at the family bank under Father's tepid supervision, dying by degrees and afternoon teas and charity committees. Mother had arranged another suitable date, Judge Whitmore's son, fresh from his second divorce. At dinner, while he mansplained my own job to me and stared at my chest, something inside me snapped. I applied to North Star Analytics that night, when they offered me the position. I packed everything that mattered into 2 suitcases and drove 2,000 miles to Denver without telling anyone. For 3 days. Mother called every hour. Then she stopped calling altogether. When I finally answered Father's 15th voicemail, he simply said, "She's removed your photos." The problem with your generation, Mother says now, gesturing with her fork, is that you think happiness matters more than duty. Look at Charlotte Ashford's daughter married to that pediatrician. They seem happy enough, but what has she contributed to her family's standing? Nothing. She might as well not exist. Maybe she's happy, I suggest. Happy. Mother speaks the word like it's profanity. Happiness is what poor people tell themselves when they can't achieve greatness. In Denver, I learned what breathing felt like. No one cared that I was a Pierce. My apartment was mine. My choices were mine. My mistakes were mine to make. When I met Ethan at a cybersecurity conference, he didn't know about the trust fund or the family name or the expectations that had been strangling me since birth. He knew me as Natalie, risk analyst with a sharp tongue and a weakness for food trucks. We married in Estes Park on a Tuesday afternoon with 2 strangers as witnesses. I wore jeans and a white sweater. He wore the smile that had undone me from the moment we met. No photographers, no society pages, no 400-person guest list dominated by Mother's business contacts. Just us and the mountains, and a promise that meant something real. You know what your problem is. Natalie. Mother sets down her wine glass, and I know this speech. I've heard it in a dozen variations. You've always thought you were special, different, better than the life you were born into. But look at you, 34, unmarried, childless, playing with spreadsheets in some glass tower. You rejected everything I tried to give you, and what do you have to show for it? Freedom, I say quietly. She laughs, that crystalline sound that used to make me flinch. Freedom, is that what you call hiding in Denver? Running away isn't freedom. Darling, it's cowardice. Sebastian jumps in, eager to please. At least I understood the value of family legacy. The foundation, the connections, the responsibility we have to maintain what our ancestors built. Yes, Mother beams at him. Sebastian understands. He's made the Pierce name even stronger, especially with his innovative investment strategies for the foundation. The word innovative makes my stomach turn. If she only knew what her golden boy and his innovations had really done to those scholarship funds. But she will. In approximately 8 minutes, she'll know everything. Tell me, Natalie. Mother leans forward. When you're alone in that Denver apartment, do you ever wonder what your life could have been if you'd just tried a little harder to fit in, if you'd been a little less? The ring burns against my chest. Every word she speaks justifies what's about to happen. Every cut, every dismissal, every attempt to erase who I am, they've all led to this moment. Every day. I lie, meeting her gaze. I think about it every single day. The discovery started with a spreadsheet that didn't add up. North Star Analytics had taken on the Pierce Promise Foundation as a client 3 months ago, a routine risk assessment for their expansion into educational technology investments. I'd tried to refuse the assignment, but my boss insisted I was the only analyst with nonprofit expertise. The irony wasn't lost on me examining my family's crown jewel while they believed I was wasting away in corporate obscurity. The first red flag was subtle. A consulting fee of $200,000 paid to Meridian Advisory Services. The company had no website, no employees on LinkedIn, no footprint except a Delaware registration. When I traced the registered address, it led to the same law firm that handled Blue Meridian Capital's incorporation, Sebastian's fund. I brought the laptop home that night and showed Ethan. He worked in cybersecurity forensics freelance, choosing his clients carefully. We'd met when he'd been hired to investigate internal fraud at a company I was analyzing. He had a gift for seeing patterns where others saw noise. "This is money laundering," he said after 3 hours of digging. "Not even sophisticated laundering. Look." He pulled up a visualization he'd created, showing money flowing from the foundation through 6 shell companies before landing in Blue Meridian's investment accounts. "Your brother is stealing from children." The foundation awarded full scholarships to underprivileged students across South Carolina. Last year's gala had raised $8 million. According to the real books, the ones Ethan uncovered through a combination of social engineering and exploited vulnerabilities in their accounting software, less than $2 million had actually reached students. "There's more," Ethan said, pulling up email archives he'd somehow accessed. "Your mother knows." The emails were damning. Lydia discussing redistribution strategies with Sebastian, approving alternative investment vehicles that were nothing but shells. One message stood out, dated 6 months ago. "The foundation's real purpose has always been influence, not charity. The scholarships are just the public face." They were using the missing funds to buy positions on boards, political favor, stakes in judges' investment funds. The Pierce Promise Foundation wasn't just corrupt, it was an influence peddling machine disguised as charity. "We have to report this," I said. Ethan was already ahead of me. "I've been documenting everything, creating forensic trails that will hold up in court. But Natalie..." He took my hands. "This will destroy them." Good. We worked in our separate apartments to avoid suspicion. Ethan compiled evidence while I used my risk analysis skills to trace every diverted dollar. $6 million in 3 years. $6 million stolen from kids who'd worked their entire lives for a chance at college. But the Pierce Heritage Trust, that discovery came from an unexpected source. Marisol, our family's housekeeper for 30 years, called me out of the blue. "Miss Natalie, your Aunt May wants to speak with you." May Whitaker was my grandfather's sister, 83 years old and mean as a snake. She'd been estranged from Mother for decades over what Mother called political differences, but what actually meant May had supported integration in the 60s. "Your mother's gotten too big for her britches," May said when we video called. "Forgot the first rule of the trust your grandfather created." The Pierce Heritage Trust controlled the family's real assets, the properties, the portfolio, the foundation's endowment. Grandfather had been paranoid about preserving family honor. He'd built in a clause any trustee convicted of moral turpitude could be removed by majority vote of the family board. "I've been keeping records," May said. "Every petty cruelty, every dodgy deal. But this foundation business, that's criminal. You get me proof. I'll call an emergency board meeting. Your third cousin Robert hates her. So does your great-uncle James. With you and me, that's enough votes." The plan crystallized over weeks. Ethan reached out to his contacts and journalism reporters who'd been investigating nonprofit fraud. We gave them everything, embargoing the stories until tonight. 8 p.m. sharp. I contacted a forensic accountant who'd lost his daughter. She'd been promised a Pierce Promise scholarship that mysteriously disappeared. He agreed to prepare a presentation celebrating the foundation's success with real numbers. The district attorney's office had been sniffing around Blue Meridian for months. An anonymous tip about tonight's gathering, with evidence of conspiracy to commit fraud, would bring them running. "Why tonight?" Ethan had asked as we finalized everything. "Because tomorrow is the foundation's annual gala. 500 guests. Mother's crowning achievement of the social calendar. By tomorrow morning, there won't be a gala. There won't be a foundation. There won't be anything left of the empire she built on other people's dreams." I looked at him across our coffee table covered in evidence files. "Are you sure you want to do this once we start? There's no going back. You'll be tied to the Pierce name, to this scandal." He pulled me close. "I'm tied to you. That's all that matters." The invitation to tonight's dinner had arrived last week. Mother's handwriting on cream cardstock. "Family dinner before the gala. Don't disappoint us again." I RSVP'd yes and included a +1. Now, sitting at this table, watching Sebastian joke about his investment genius while Mother preens about their charitable work, I feel the weight of every stolen scholarship. Every kid who won't go to college because my family needed another yacht, another property, another politician in their pocket. Ethan's phone buzzes. He glances at it, then shows me under the table. A message from our journalist contact, stories locked and loaded, counting down. 7:59 p.m. 1 more minute until the first story drops. 2 minutes until the presentation begins in the next room. 4 minutes until law enforcement arrives. I finger the chain around my neck, feeling the ring beneath my collar. 3 years of marriage they know nothing about. 3 years of building a life they can't touch. 3 years of gathering the evidence that will end them. "You know," I say, interrupting Sebastian's story about his latest acquisition, "I've been thinking about family legacy a lot lately." Mother smiles, triumphant. "Finally coming to your senses." "Something like that?" 8 p.m. across the city. The first notification alerts are pinging on phones. The story is live. The invitation had arrived on a Tuesday, slipping under my Denver apartment door like a snake. Family dinner before the gala. Don't disappoint us again. I'd stood in my kitchen, holding the cream cardstock with Mother's perfect penmanship, and felt something shift inside me. Not fear, not anxiety, something closer to destiny. We could ignore it, Ethan suggested that evening, finding me surrounded by evidence files. You don't owe them anything. That's exactly why I have to go. I held up a photo from the Foundation's website, 50 beaming scholarship recipients from last year. I owe them. The 3-week preparation was methodical, military, even. Ethan created a timeline down to the minute, accounting for every variable. We ran through scenarios. What if Mother tried to have us removed? What if Sebastian got violent? What if Father had one of his panic episodes? The press release needs to hit first, Ethan mapped out on our whiteboard. 8 p.m. Exactly. That gives the journalists time to verify before the presentation starts. I added a note. Aunt May has access to the conference room. She's insisting on showing a tribute video to the Foundation's work. What May would actually show was the forensic accountant's masterpiece, a real-time visualization of money flowing from donation to theft, each transaction documented with receipts. We'd tested it 3 times. It would run for exactly 12 minutes. Enough time for the horror to sink in. The district attorney's investigator was a contact of Ethan's from a previous case. If someone were to alert us to an active financial crime in progress, she'd said carefully over coffee, we'd have an obligation to respond immediately. Hypothetically, Ethan replied, if that crime were occurring at 8:07 p.m. at Harbor Oaks Country Club, how long would response take? Hypothetically, 3 minutes. We'd probably want to secure all electronic devices immediately. Prevent destruction of evidence. The trust documents required more finesse. Marisol, God bless her, had maintained her key to the family document storage despite retiring 5 years ago. Your mother forgot I had it, she told me during a clandestine meeting at a coffee shop. Forgot a lot about the people who actually raised her children. The moral turpitude clause was ironclad. Grandfather, paranoid about family disgrace after his brother's embezzlement scandal in the 70s, had made it broad any trustee convicted of or credibly accused of crimes involving dishonesty would be subject to immediate removal vote. But it has to be called during a family gathering, Aunt May explained during one of our planning calls. That's why the dinner is perfect. We'll have quorum, you, me, your father, Sebastian, and Lydia. I've already lined up Robert and James by phone. They'll conference in for the vote. The most delicate preparation was emotional. 3 years of distance had scabbed over the wounds, but returning would rip them open. Ethan and I practiced in our living room, him playing Mother while I rehearsed staying calm. You're pathetic, he said in her clipped tone. A disappointment to generations of Pierces. Thank you for that observation. I practiced responding evenly. You'll never be anything more than a failure. I'll consider your perspective. But the real preparation was choosing what to wear. The ring, obviously, would stay hidden until the moment. The dress needed to be understated enough to avoid initial comment, but elegant enough that when I stood to make my announcement, I'd look like what I was, the adult in the room. We drove from Denver in shifts, 14 hours straight, arriving in Charleston the morning of the dinner. We checked into a hotel under Ethan's name, 2 blocks from the country club, close enough to walk if they tried to block our car. Far enough to avoid accidental encounters. Last chance to back out, Ethan said as we dressed for dinner. I pulled the chain over my head, tucking the ring beneath my collar. They had 34 years of chances to be different people. They chose this. The drive to Harbor Oaks took 7 minutes. I counted each one, feeling the weight of what would happen at 8 p.m. The valet who took our keys was new. He didn't recognize me. Good. No advance warning for Mother. Walking through those oak doors felt like entering a time machine. Nothing changed here. That was the point. Preservation of the past, specifically the version where families like ours mattered more than others. Miss Pierce, the hostess, Margaret, had been here since I was 12. Your mother is already in the blue room. Of course she was. Mother arrived early to everything, the better to control the environment. Margaret, I smiled warmly. This is Mr. Ward. He'll be joining us. Her eyes flickered. Mother hadn't mentioned a guest, but she recovered smoothly. Of course. Right this way. The walk to the private dining room felt both endless and instant. Each step was a choice, each breath a commitment. In the conference room next door, Aunt May would be setting up the projector. Across the city, reporters were reviewing our evidence one final time. In his car, the forensic investigator was waiting for Ethan's signal. "Ready?" Ethan murmured as we approached the blue room's door. I thought of every tear I'd hidden, every dream Mother had crushed, every scholarship that had been stolen, every child whose future had been sold for my family's influence. I've been ready for 34 years. Margaret opened the door. Mother looked up from the flowers she was arranging white orchids because she believed they signified refinement. After tonight, they'd just remind everyone of funeral arrangements. "Natalie," she said, her smile sharp as winter. "How brave of you to show your face." I smiled back, feeling the weight of the ring against my chest. "Mother, let's talk about disappointment." The clock on the wall showed 7:41 p.m., 19 minutes until everything changed. Mother raised her wine glass, the Waterford crystal catching the light from the chandelier like a prism of privilege. The champagne inside barely moved. She had perfect control. "Always. A toast," she announced, her voice carrying that particular frequency that made everyone stop mid-conversation. "To family gatherings, however, sparse they may be." Father lifted his bourbon. Sebastian raised his glass with that smirk I'd wanted to slap off his face since we were children. Ethan followed suit, his movements deliberately careful, playing the outsider to perfection. "And of course," Mother continued, her eyes finding mine with laser precision, "to my daughter Natalie, 34 years old, still unmarried, still childless, still finding herself, apparently." The words hung in the air like a noose. "No wonder you're still single at 34, she added with a laugh that tinkled like breaking glass. "You never did learn how to keep anyone's interest." The table erupted in uncomfortable laughter, Father's nervous wheeze, Sebastian's genuine amusement. The sound wrapped around me, familiar as a shroud. How many dinners had I sat through like this? How many times had I been the punchline to Mother's perfectly crafted cruelties under the table? Ethan's knee pressed against mine. Steady. Sure. 3 years of marriage condensed into that single point of contact. "Perhaps," I said, setting down my glass with deliberate calm. "I've just been selective." "Selective?" Mother savored the word like the 40-year-old port she saved for special humiliations. "That's one way to describe driving away every suitable match I've ever arranged. The Thornton boy, the Whitmore heir, that lovely banker from Savannah, the cocaine addict, the divorce with anger issues, and the man who asked if I'd quit working after marriage to better serve his career." I corrected. "Details." She waved dismissively. "You've always been too particular. Standards are admirable, darling, but at your age, they become tragic." 7:55 p.m. on my phone screen. 5 minutes. "Speaking of tragic," Sebastian interjected, eager to pile on. "Did you see the Brewster girls' engagement announcement 26, marrying into the Caldwell fortune? Some women understand opportunity. Some women understand their value," Mother added, refilling her glass. "Others flee to Denver and play with computers, pretending spreadsheets are a substitute for family." The ring burned against my skin. Every word they spoke was gasoline on a fire they didn't know was already lit. "Tell me, Ethan," Mother turned to him suddenly, "what exactly do you do? Natalie mentioned your colleagues, but she's always been vague about her work." "Forensic analysis," Ethan replied smoothly. "Digital investigation, primarily." "How modern." Her tone suggested she'd found something distasteful on her shoe. And is that lucrative? It pays for what matters, which would be truth. Mother laughed again, that crystalline sound that had haunted my childhood nightmares. Truth. How refreshingly naive. Truth is whatever the victors decide it is. Mr. Ward, the Pierces have been victors in Charleston for 200 years. 7:57 p.m. You know what your problem has always been, Natalie. Mother wasn't done. She was never done until she drew blood. You think you're better than this family, better than the life you were born into. But look at you sitting at this table, alone, while your brother builds empires and I shape the future of this city through the foundation. The foundation. I let the words sit for a moment, tasting them. Yes, let's talk about the foundation. 20 million raised in 5 years, Sebastian boasted. Our scholarship recipients have gone on to Yale, Harvard, Stanford. How many? He blinked. What? How many recipients? Exactly. The numbers are, he waved vaguely, in the annual report. 50 last year, according to your website. 2 million in scholarships. Interesting math, considering you raised 8 million at last year's gala alone. Mother's eyes narrowed. The foundation has operational costs, investment strategies, shell companies. The words dropped like a hammer on crystal. 7:59 p.m. I beg your pardon. Mother's voice had gone arctic. Meridian Advisory Services, Coastal Investment Partners, Blue Tide Holdings. I listed them calmly. Should I continue? There are 6 more. Sebastian's face drained of color. How did you? My job. Remember risk analysis. I'm very, very good at it. 8 p.m. Across the room. Mother's phone buzzed. Then Sebastian's. Then Father's. The notifications came in waves, reporters' emails, Google alerts, the first dominoes falling. What have you done? Mother hissed. I pulled the chain from beneath my collar, letting the ring catch the light. The 2-carat diamond Ethan had chosen, not because I needed flash, but because he said I deserved to sparkle after years of being dimmed. Everyone, I said, sliding the ring onto my finger with theatrical precision. I'd like you to properly meet my husband, 3 years married as of last month. The room froze. Mother's glass stopped halfway to her lips. Sebastian's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. Father just stared. Bourbon forgotten. You. Mother started, then stopped, then started again. Shh, you married without your permission, your approval, your orchestration. I stood, feeling the power of finally being exactly who I was. Yes, I did, because my life isn't yours to control. It never was. Ethan rose beside me, his hand finding mine, wedding band gleaming in the light. But that's just the beginning, I continued, as their phones buzzed again. You might want to check the news. The Charleston Post just broke a fascinating story about the Pierce Promise Foundation, something about $6 million in diverted funds. Mother stood so fast her chair scraped against the hardwood. You vindictive little, the conference room next door, I interrupted, checking my phone. Should be starting Aunt May's presentation right about now. She wanted to celebrate the foundation's work with a detailed financial analysis. Very detailed. Through the wall, we could hear the murmur of voices, then gasps as the projection began. The forensic accountant had done his work well, every stolen dollar tracked, every shell company exposed, every diverted scholarship displayed in damning detail. You can't prove anything, Sebastian sputtered. I don't have to. I smiled. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit will do that. They should be arriving. I checked my phone again. In about 7 minutes. 8:02 p.m. Mother lunged forward, but Ethan stepped between us. Mrs. Pierce, I'd recommend you contact your lawyer. You're going to need one. A good one. You're lying. Mother's voice cracked like thin ice, her composure finally fracturing. This is some pathetic revenge fantasy. The email's Mother. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the screenshots Ethan had preserved. Your personal account discussing alternative revenue streams with Sebastian. January 15th. The Foundation's true purpose has never been charity. March 3rd. Redirect the Garrett Memorial donation through Blue Meridian. June 27th. The scholarship announcements provide sufficient public cover. Her face went from pale to ashen. How dare you hack into... I didn't hack anything. You used the Foundation's email server for personal correspondence. The Foundation that hired my firm for risk assessment. Every email was legally accessible. Sebastian fumbled for his phone, frantically typing. My lawyers will... Already received preservation notices. Ethan interjected calmly. Any attempt to delete evidence now constitutes obstruction of justice. Your texts, emails, files, they're all frozen. The district attorney made sure of that about... He checked his watch. 3 minutes ago. 8:04 p.m. Through the wall, the presentation continued. We could hear chairs scraping, voices rising in alarm. Someone, probably board member Harrison, shouted, "This can't be legal." Every transaction documented, I continued, watching my family's world collapse in real time. Every fake invoice, every shell company, every diverted dollar, 6 million stolen from children who earned those scholarships, 6 million funneled into bribes, political donations, and Sebastian's hedge fund. It was an investment strategy. Sebastian protested, standing now, his face flushed. The Foundation needed growth. The Foundation needed to give scholarships. I snapped, my control finally slipping. 50 kids last year alone lost their chance at college so you could buy another boat, another car, another politician. Mother recovered enough venom to hiss. You ungrateful bitch. Everything you have came from this family. Everything I have, I built myself. In Denver, away from you. I met her gaze steadily. The trust fund never touched it. The family name, I've been considering legally changing it. The only thing this family gave me was a masterclass in how not to be human. 8:05 p.m. The conference room door burst open. Aunt May wheeled herself out, her eyes bright with satisfaction. Lydia, dear, she called sweetly. Your presentation is causing quite a stir. The forensic accountant you didn't know I'd hired is very thorough. May, Mother snarled. You vindictive old... Careful. May smiled. We have company coming. Right on cue, the building's fire alarm began to chirp, not the full alarm, just the warning beep that meant someone had opened an emergency exit. Standard procedure when law enforcement didn't want to cause panic by walking through the main entrance. They're not here for you, I told Father, who'd gone pale and was clutching his chest. Unless you knew. Did you know? Dad. He shook his head mutely. Bourbon abandoned, looking between Mother and me like he was seeing both of us for the first time. Of course he didn't know. Mother spat. Graham doesn't know anything unless I tell him. And there it was, the contempt she'd barely hidden for years, finally naked in the light. The gala, Sebastian said suddenly. Tomorrow's gala. 500 guests. Cancelled, I informed him. The story's been live for 6 minutes. Every major donor has already received an email from the Charleston Post. The venue has been notified. The caterers. The band. Although, I pretended to consider, I suppose you could still hold it. Might be a bit awkward explaining where the previous year's donations went. 8:06 p.m. Mother's phone rang. She looked at the screen and went even paler. Channel 4, she whispered. Don't answer, Sebastian advised. It stopped ringing, then immediately started again. Channel 7 this time. The beauty of embargoing the story until 8 p.m., Ethan explained, is that it hits right at the beginning of the evening news cycle. Every station in South Carolina has it. By 8:30 p.m., it'll be on the national feeds. You've destroyed us, Mother said, her voice hollow. Your own family. No, I corrected. You destroyed yourselves. You just assumed I'd never be brave enough to expose it. Through the window, red and blue lights flickered in the parking lot. No sirens yet, they were being discreet. For now. But here's the part you're really going to hate, I continued, pulling out the trust documents Marisol had helped me retrieve. The Pierce Heritage Trust, grandfather's moral turpitude clause. Any trustee credibly accused of crimes involving dishonesty can be removed by family vote. Mother laughed bitterly. You need a majority. Graham won't vote against me. Sebastian certainly won't. That's 2 against 2. With May. Actually, May rolled closer. Robert's on the phone. So is James. Conference call from the next room. Both cousins you've spent 20 years alienating. Lydia. Shall we call the vote? This is ridiculous, Mother snarled. You can't motion to remove Lydia Pierce as primary trustee of the Pierce Heritage Trust based on credible evidence of financial fraud, I stated formally. All in favor. Aye, said May immediately. From the speakerphone in May's lap, 2 voices chimed. Aye. Opposed? Sebastian opened his mouth, then closed it. His phone was now buzzing continuously. His investors, no doubt, seeing the news. Sebastian. Mother turned to him, desperation creeping in. Vote. But Sebastian was staring at his phone screen, at what looked like a screenshot of his fund's assets being frozen. I need to call my lawyer. Graham. Mother turned to Father. For God's sake, say something. Father looked at her for a long moment. 37 years of marriage condensed into that stare. Then he looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years. I abstain, he said quietly. Motion passes, May announced cheerfully. Effective immediately. Lydia Pierce is removed as trustee, as the only family member with no financial irregularities. Natalie is appointed interim trustee until a full vote can be held. 8:07 p.m. The distinctive sound of a police radio crackled from the hallway. Heavy footsteps approached. The knock, when it came, was almost polite. Charleston County District Attorney's Office, a voice called. We have a warrant. The door opened, and Detective Patricia Morse entered with 2 other officers. I recognized her from Ethan's preparation files, 15 years in financial crimes, a reputation for being thorough and unflinching. Mrs. Lydia Pierce, she said formally. Mr. Sebastian Pierce, we have warrants for your financial records and electronic devices. Please step away from your phones. This is harassment, Mother said, but her voice had lost its edge. She looked smaller somehow. Her Chanel suit suddenly costume-like against the reality of actual consequences. This is justice, I corrected, then turned to Detective Morse. There's a presentation running next door with forensic analysis of the fraud. The accountant who prepared it is ready to testify. Natalie Pierce. The detective studied me. You're the whistleblower. One of them, my husband, Ethan Ward, compiled the digital evidence. Mother's laugh was bitter. Of course, the husband we knew nothing about. Tell me, was this entire marriage just part of your revenge? No. Ethan stepped forward. The marriage was real. The investigation came later. When we discovered what you'd done, you want to know the truth. Mrs. Pierce, I fell in love with your daughter because she's everything you're not: genuine, compassionate, moral. Moral, Mother spat. She's destroying her own family. The Pierce Heritage Trust includes the Sullivan's Island cottage, I said, pulling out the property deed I'd retrieved. The one grandfather bought in 1952. The one you've been using for your affairs with Judge Whitmore. Father's head snapped up. What? Oh, did she not mention that? I turned to him. Every Thursday when she said she was at the foundation, she was at the cottage. With the judge who's been fixing Sebastian's regulatory problems? Mother went white. You don't know what you're talking about. Security footage from the marina, Ethan said simply. Date stamped. The judge's boat docked every Thursday afternoon for the past 18 months. Graham, Mother started, but Father held up his hand. Don't, he said quietly. Just don't. 8:15 p.m. As interim trustee, I continued, addressing the room but looking at Mother. My first act is to freeze all Pierce Heritage Trust distributions effective immediately. No more monthly payments, no more credit lines, no more funding for your lifestyle. You can't, Sebastian protested. I have obligations. Investors. You have bigger problems? Detective Morse interrupted. Mr. Pierce, I need you to come with us for questioning. I'm not saying anything without my lawyer. That's your right, but your assets have been frozen by federal order. You might want to consider a public defender. The words hit him like a physical blow. Sebastian Pierce, who'd never worn anything that wasn't tailored, who'd never driven anything that wasn't German, facing a public defender. The cottage, I said, returning to Mother. You have 24 hours to remove your personal items. After that, it's being converted into a retreat for scholarship recipients. They'll stay there during college tours, job interviews, all the opportunities you stole from them. Mother's composure finally shattered completely. You vindictive little bitch, I gave you everything. The best schools, the best opportunities, the best manipulation, the best gaslighting, the best emotional abuse disguised as love. I pulled out a folder I'd been saving. Would you like me to read the emails you sent when I moved to Denver? You're dead to this family. Don't come crawling back when you fail. I should have known you'd amount to nothing. Enough, Father said suddenly, standing. He looked older than I'd ever seen him, but also somehow more present. Lydia, stop talking. Sebastian, get a lawyer. Natalie. He paused, searching for words. I'm sorry. I should have protected you. You should have, I agreed. But you chose comfort over courage. Every time. 8:20 p.m. There's more, Aunt May announced, clearly enjoying herself. The Foundation's board of directors held an emergency vote 5 minutes ago. Unanimous decision to dissolve the organization and transfer all remaining assets to the Community Foundation of Charleston for distribution to legitimate scholarship programs. You planned all of this, Mother said, the realization hitting her. Every detail. For 3 months, I confirmed. Every email you sent, every transaction you made, every lie you told. We documented everything. The gala deposits, Sebastian said suddenly. The venue, the catering. Those are personal guarantees. If the foundation dissolves, you're personally liable. I finished. About $300,000. I believe. Better call that public defender soon. Detective Morse stepped forward. Mrs. Pierce, we need you to come with us as well. I need to change, Mother said, grasping for any shred of dignity. You can change at the station, the detective replied flatly. As they prepared to leave, Mother turned to me one last time. Was it worth it destroying your family for your petty revenge? This isn't revenge, I said, meeting her gaze steadily. This is consequences. And you didn't destroy my family. Ethan is my family, the one I chose, the one that actually loves me for who I am, not who they can force me to become. You'll regret this, she hissed, when you're alone. I'll never be alone. I cut her off, taking Ethan's hand. That's the difference between us. You surrounded yourself with people you could control and called it love. I found someone who sees me as an equal and built something real. 8:25 p.m. The detective led them out, Mother, with her chin up in defiance. Sebastian frantically texting on the one phone they hadn't confiscated yet. Father remained behind, sinking into his chair. The trust, he said quietly. What happens to me? You get the same monthly allowance Grandfather specified for surviving spouses, I said. Enough to live on, not enough for luxury. The house will be sold to pay restitution. You can move to the apartment above the carriage house. It's part of a separate trust. He nodded slowly. And you? We're going back to Denver tonight. Our flight leaves at 11:30 p.m. I'll handle the trust remotely until everything's settled. Then I'm appointing an independent trustee. You're giving it up, May asked, surprised. The power. I never wanted power. I said. I wanted freedom and truth. Now I have both. Through the window, we could see the parking lot filling with news vans. Someone had leaked that the Pierce family was being arrested at their own country club. Tomorrow, it would be front-page news across the state. One more thing, I said, pulling out the last document. The scholarship recipients from the past 5 years who were shortchanged Ethan and I are personally funding the gap. Every penny stolen from them will be replaced. With what money? Father asked. My salary, his fees from legitimate investigative work, and the trust fund I never touched. It'll take most of what we have, but those kids earned those scholarships. They deserve their chance. May wheeled over and took my hand. Your grandfather would be proud. He always said you were the only one with backbone in this family. 8:30 p.m. The room felt different now, smaller, less imposing. The portraits on the walls were just paintings, the chandelier just glass. The power this place had held over me for 34 years evaporated like morning mist. Ready? Ethan asked, his hand warm in mine. I looked around one last time at Father slumped in his chair, at May grinning like she'd won the lottery, at the empty chairs where Mother and Sebastian had held court over their kingdom of lies. I've been ready my whole life, I said. I just didn't know it until now. We walked out together, past the conference room where board members were still reeling from the presentation, past the main dining room where whispers followed our movement, past the portraits of Pierce ancestors who'd built their wealth on the backs of others. At the door, I turned back one last time and saw Margaret, the hostess, watching from the corner. She gave me the smallest nod approval, maybe, or just acknowledgement that sometimes the mighty do fall. You choose Sue that, I whispered to myself in the language of my thoughts. You chose truth. The Harbor Oaks Country Club's heavy oak doors swung shut behind us with a sound like a judge's gavel falling. Final. Irreversible. Outside, the November evening had turned crisp, carrying the salt-sweet smell of the Charleston harbor mixed with the chaos of consequences. News vans lined the circular drive like vultures at a feast. Reporters surged forward, microphones extended like weapons, voices overlapping in a symphony of questions. Mrs. Pierce, is it true about the $6 million? Did you know about your mother's fraud? How long have you been married? Ethan's arm came around my shoulders, solid and sure. We pushed through together, saying nothing. There would be time for statements later, carefully crafted by lawyers. Tonight was not about public perception. Tonight was about walking away from the fire I'd set. The valet brought our rental car deliberately anonymous, a gray sedan that would blend into any parking lot. As Ethan drove us away from Harbor Oaks, I watched in the side mirror as 2 more police vehicles pulled into the lot. Through the club's illuminated windows, I could see shadows moving frantically, members gathering in clusters, the Pierce empire collapsing in real time. My phone vibrated continuously texts, calls, emails. I turned it off without looking. There was only one notification that mattered, and it came at 8:45 p.m. on Ethan's phone. Wire transfer complete. All scholarship funds distributed to recipients. We drove in silence through the historic district, past the mansions that had watched over Charleston's secrets for centuries. Each house a fortress of old money, old rules, old cruelties dressed up as tradition. Tomorrow, they'd all be talking about the Pierces, how the mighty had fallen, how shameful, how shocking, how inevitable, if anyone had been paying attention. At the airport, we returned the rental car and walked through security like any other couple heading home. My ring caught the fluorescent lights, no longer hidden, no longer secret. 3 years I'd worn it on a chain, and now it sat on my finger like it had always belonged there. Gate 42, Ethan said, checking our boarding passes. We've got an hour. We found a quiet corner in the terminal bar, ordered 2 bourbons good ones, not the 40-year-old pretension Father preferred, but honest Kentucky bourbon that burned clean. Regrets? Ethan asked, studying my face. I thought about Mother being processed at the station, her mugshot eventually making the morning papers, Sebastian calling every connection he had, finding them all suddenly unavailable, Father alone in that big house, maybe understanding for the first time what loneliness actually meant. No, I said, and meant it. They had so many chances to be different people, to actually help those kids instead of using them as props, to love me instead of trying to own me. The cottage will make a good retreat center, Ethan said. Those scholarship kids deserve to see the ocean. I smiled, imagining teenagers from small South Carolina towns standing on that beach, planning futures that were actually possible now. Grandfather would have liked that. He grew up poor, before he made his fortune. Mother never wanted anyone to know that. 11:15 p.m. They called our flight. As we walked to the gate, I caught a glimpse of ourselves in a window reflection. We looked ordinary, a couple heading home after a business trip. Nobody special, nobody important, nobody's disappointment. The plane lifted off at 11:37 p.m., banking west toward Denver, toward home, toward the life we'd built without asking anyone's permission. Below us, Charleston glittered like scattered diamonds, beautiful and cold. I thought about the family photos lining the country club hallways, generations of Pierces staring down with their practiced smiles and hollow eyes. Tomorrow, those photos would mean something different, not legacy, but liability, not power, but proof that power corrupts when it goes unchecked. My phone, when I turned it back on in Denver, had 347 messages. I deleted them all unread except one. From Marisol. Your grandfather would be proud. Your mother never understood the Pierce name was supposed to mean something good. Ethan and I took an Uber home to our Capitol Hill apartment, the one with the creaky floors and the neighbor who played jazz too loud, and the kitchen where we'd mapped out the complete destruction of my family's empire over coffee and takeout. The key turned in our lock, our real home, our real life, where my name on the mailbox said N. Ward, because I'd started using Ethan's name socially years ago. Another secret Mother never knew. Inside, everything was exactly as we'd left it that morning. No mahogany panels, no portraits, no crystal that cost more than most people's cars. Just our life, built on truth instead of appearances. I walked to the window that overlooked the city, Denver sprawling toward the mountains, those immovable peaks that didn't care about anybody's bloodline or bank account. Somewhere back in Charleston, the news was spreading through every drawing room and boardroom. The Pierce Promise Foundation was dead. The Pierce family was disgraced. The Pierce fortune was frozen. And Natalie Pierce, the disappointment, the failure. The one who couldn't just fit in had brought it all down with nothing but truth and a ring hidden under her collar. Ethan came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist, his chin on my shoulder. So what now? Now, I turned in his arms, looking at this man who'd seen me at my worst and chosen to stay, who'd helped me fight battles he didn't have to fight, who'd married me in jeans on a mountain because love didn't need an audience. Now we live, actually live, without secrets, without shame, without apologies. No more hiding. No more hiding. Outside our window, Denver slept peacefully, unaware that the last Southern dynasty had just fallen to a spreadsheet and a marriage certificate. Tomorrow would bring lawyers, depositions, probably years of legal proceedings. But tonight, for the first time in 34 years, I was exactly who I was supposed to be. Not a Pierce anymore. Just Natalie. Finally, just Natalie. The key to the cottage sat on our coffee table, waiting to be handed over to kids who'd earned their chance at something better. It caught the streetlight through our window, gleaming like a promise. Or maybe like justice. Same thing. Really, in the end. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please comment below and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts. What would you have done in Natalie's position? Your perspectives mean everything to this community.